This is episode 11 of the Wilderness Locals podcast. On this episode, myself and Wacedog chat with Rob and Blake from the Stikbow Chronicles. This podcast is brought to you by Kafaru International, the toughest hunting gear on the planet, bar none. Frontiersman gear, high quality, completely custom handmade knives made in the heart of the Peace Country. And as always, we're brought to you by Just Shooting Arrows, BC's premier archery shop. That's like a Canadian thing to say, right? That's man.
Dude, I'm almost Canadian. I'm like 60 miles south. I feel like we're brothers.
You're in Idaho, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been to Idaho, and there's nothing Canadian about Idaho.
The only thing Canadian about Idaho is Highway 95 and all those friggin' Alberta plates going Mach 9 south. Like, what the fuck? You guys drive so fast. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, we drive up here. If you ain't first, you're last in Alberta.
Okay, but here's the thing. Here, I'm going to offend people from Alberta now because I'm from BC, right? We were driving to go see Wacey in southern Alberta last year to go mule deer hunting. And me and Chad were just like, what are all these lines in the road for? And every time you're coming to a stop sign, I'm like, I don't understand it. And then like 3 hours into it, I'm like, oh, it's because there's no turns here. You're just going straight forever. Like, you'll fall asleep.
To warn you when you got to stop, wake you up.
In Alberta, they actually have lines on the highway, and the lines are like whatever, exactly a kilometer apart. And so they actually monitor guys in airplanes. That's how they see if you're speeding or not.
Are you shitting me?
Yeah, they like our Highway 2 and stuff. That's how they keep up with speeders on that highway, is they fly above it.
Yeah, it actually blew my mind when we were getting into the prairies there out of the Rockies. It just like all of a sudden it's flat and straight forever. Like set your cruise control at 100 miles an hour and just go until you get to where you're going.
So two of y'all from Canada, one from North Idaho, and I'm from Texas. So what y'all are saying is I can't bitch about being cold.
Well, I don't know. I think it's colder there than it is here right now.
Is it really?
I think so, probably. I mean, I don't have snow.
He's on the coast, so that they don't really have a winter, right? Tyler is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the lowest temp we saw was -10 and a wind chill down around -30, which I know from talking to Wacey a minute ago, that's a warm flip-flop day for them. But
yeah, out here, I could look up what it is in Fahrenheit, but it's like, I don't know, it was 8 degrees Celsius here. So that's like, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. I'll look.
Well, that's way above freezing.
That's above freezing, yeah.
Oh, yeah. 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 46 degrees here today.
Damn.
Yeah, he's coastal. He's coastal though, yeah. So
where on the coast are you at, Tyler?
I'm like 2 hour and a half, 2 hours from Vancouver. So I'm about as coastal as it gets.
So how do you know Wacey?
His cousin is one of my best friends. So we hooked up like that and hit it off and been buddies ever since. So
in the States, when you say hooked up, it's a little different.
Yeah, no, none of that. No.
No. We did share a hotel room though, so
Yeah, and he was eating mountain houses for a few days there, so it was not a good smelling hotel room. So
what do you want to talk about? Where are we going with this?
I mean, whose format do we follow? Do we follow my format or your format, or what are we doing?
Let's follow your format. You run it, and we'll just if you give me the file, we'll just dump it on ours as well. So put them on both.
Yeah, let's do it. So basically, what we do is we kind of got tired of all of the hunting podcasts out there that are dudes just bragging about how they're the best hunters on earth and giving advice that they're not fit to give. So I'm having everybody on, guys that have killed one deer and guys like Snyder that kill a pile of deer every year, right? And we're just talking hunting stories. So, I mean, I got both you guys here now, right? So we can talk about how you guys got going, who you are, what you do, maybe outside of the podcast a bit, and kind of go from there.
No, I like your approach. I heard that earlier, and you know, with the Stikbo Chronicles in the beginning, I kind of boxed myself in, right? Because it's just all about Stickbows, and now we've been able to branch out a little bit. But right from the get go, you know, I would love to talk to some other guys and just, you know, like you're talking, you know, talk hunting stories. I think you got a great idea there.
Cool. Thanks, man. It's fun too, because you get to hear a lot of people's perspectives, and going from talking to guys that are brand new to talking to guys that are like extreme veterans or experts is pretty interesting, right? So yeah. I actually don't know that much about your story, Rob, and I know very little about your story, Blake, about how you guys got going and if you were born into it or what the deal is. So how did you guys get started hunting?
You want to start, Blake? You know, I grew up in Massachusetts, right? And when people think about Massachusetts, it's like you know, all city and stuff, but man, I had a ton of ground to run around in. I was in the woods 24/7 from the time I was about 6, but I didn't have anybody to show me anything. So I was just like, I was just ate up with it. And how, why, I got no idea, because there was nobody. There was nobody that to lead me along. And so, you know, I dreamed about going out west, and I ended up when I was 21, 22. After getting done with my service, I headed out west and went to a guide school. Oh, cool. And you talk about, so you guys all old enough to remember Cheers, the show Cheers?
I think I may have caught the tail end of it.
Yeah. I mean, Cliff Clavin. Right, I sounded like Cliff Clavin, full on, and here I am guiding elk hunts in the Frank Church Wilderness in Idaho, and it's like full on Cliff Clavin. But no, you know, I always on the podcast I tell my story is that, you know, I'm not a great hunter. You know, I've done a lot, but I have got to hunt with some of the greatest hunters around. Right. Yeah. I've, you know, through guiding in Idaho and Alaska, I had opportunities to meet and hunt with some of the best. So that's my story.
I never did hear your story, Rob, fully, how you ended up in Alaska guiding, and you should just tell us that quick.
Yeah. So when I was guiding in the Frank Church, there was a dude named Dan Hooper. He was pretty legendary with the outfit. I mean, the guy, he's one of those guys who could probably fly a plane first try, you know, shoe a horse. You know, he's a hell of a taxidermist. He's good at everything. Well, he ended up in Alaska guiding brown bear hunts. And in 2006.
So wicked.
Oh, yeah. So in 2006, another friend of ours booked a hunt with them. And then they asked me, hey, will you come up and video it? So I'm like, holy smokes, yeah. So I went up and we had a fantastic hunt. We ended up 75 yards, you know, from a toad. I think it was 9.6 or 9.8. And get it all on video. Boom, shoots. It was a rifle hunt. And he kills the bear. Well, I just hit it off with the outfitter and their family. And they're like, hey, will you work on getting your, you know, guide's license and come up? So the season was, I remember, I think it's springtime in the even years and fall in the odd years. So it was quite an ordeal to get my license up there. But, you know, once I did, yeah, dude, I go from a kid from Massachusetts, just dreaming about hunting, with no guidance to what I considered the pinnacle of opportunities was guiding brown bear hunts, in Alaska. So I feel so fortunate to have done all that I have. I mean, I'm really lucky.
That's one of those hunts that whenever you ask any like real vet, hey, what's one hunt that you wish you could do if you couldn't do any other hunt? They all say brown bear, every single one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was fantastic. I did it for 2006. The last year I went up was 2012. I just told my wife, I'd be gone for a month, and we had a young boy, and I was like, nah, better shut her down. So great opportunity.
And then how did that spiral into the whole Stikbo obsession?
Oh, dude, I've got the craziest story of how I ended up shooting a Stickbow. I mean, so as a kid, I buy a bow, I'm 16 years old. I'd had other bows, but if I buy my first hunting bow when I'm about 16, I guarantee you the thing, it was a Golden Eagle something or another, no tuning, no, I mean, I was probably shooting off the shelf, 2117s, like, I was just so frustrated by the time I'm 22 years old or 21, somewhere in there. I'm just pissed off. I can't hit shit. And so picked up a bear takedown, and within a couple of arrows, I was hitting stuff. And I'm like, well, hell, this works. So, yeah, I mean, I couldn't hit shit with a compound. So I picked up a recurve.
That seems like a pretty far departure from today. A guy can't hit anything with with a compound, so they pick up a stick.
Yeah. Well, it was just you talk about my learning curve has been a long sweeping turn, and not having any guidance, with a compound. It was just, it was just easier with a recurve. And that was about, that was 89. That was about when Traditional Bowhunter magazine came out. And, that was when Fred Asbeld was putting his books out. So there wasn't a lot of people out there, but there was just enough information to make me feel like I wasn't alone.
That's perfect. And so since then, it's obviously turned into a full on obsession for you. Eh?
A while back, I was filling out some form, some application thing. And one of the questions was, it's probably 7 years ago. This is just what I do. I mean, I don't go to bars. I don't, I just shoot my bow and I'm out in the woods screwing around. The question on the application was, how do you practice bow hunting? And it really struck me I sat there and I thought, well, shit, that's my life. It's not practice. It's just what I do. So.
Well, I kind of fortunately have skipped the whole fumbling solo step with guys like Wacey and all the other resources that are around now. So I'm fortunate to maybe be getting at it a little later than you did, but sounds like you had quite the adventure.
Oh, my life has been an adventure for sure.
Nice. What about you, Blake? How'd you get going?
Man, it was just I just grew up in it. One of those things that my grandpa hunted, my dad hunted, so I hunted. My grandpa was a rifle hunter, so he never bow hunted. But my dad, whenever he was young, probably in his 20s, he started hunting with a bow. Him and a few of his buddies, and he fell in love with it from the get-go. And whenever I was growing up, so I was probably 10 years old. He was part owners in an archery shop, and so I grew up around archery and bow hunting, and was just that's from the get-go. That's pretty much all I wanted to do. And that's not to say that I only hunt with a bow. I hunt with a bow 95% of the time, but if I can get a muzzleloader tag here or there or something else, I'll I'll hunt other ways if I can get some different opportunities. But no, so I shot a compound from the time I was, could walk pretty much until a couple 3 years ago. And, I've been pretty much all Stikbo since, barring, a shoulder injury and a hiccup here or there. But anymore, that's pretty much all I want to hunt with is a Stikbo. I don't get too fired up about getting out with anything else.
Yeah, that's fair, man. It's crazy to head into the woods with them for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it was just, if you'd have told me 10 years ago that I'd end up being a Stikbo only bow hunter, I probably told you were crazy. Just because at that time back then, there wasn't, not to say that there wasn't a ton of people doing it and doing it successfully, but maybe it wasn't as the information wasn't as readily available, and those people weren't as easy to access as maybe they are now. And, what little experience I had around Stikbo guys, not to sound too down in the dumps, but they just weren't very good. So I didn't have much interest in going out in the woods and flinging a bunch of arrows around and not really hitting anything. So I guess, and the main thing that kind of spurred my interest is seeing, some of the guys like Aaron and, some others through social media have a lot of success and, shoot the bow really well. And, I'm a competitive guy. I'm a pretty driven guy, goal oriented and all of those things. So I thought if they could do it, then I want to try it. And, here we are. That's pretty much my story of how I got to where I'm at. And in the last, 2-3 years, I've started, going out of state a lot more than I used to and trying to dip my toes in different waters. So.
Yeah, I think that's one major advantage of being central in the U.S. a little bit, or in the U.S. for that matter, is you can hit all those states. It kind of blows our mind up here how you can be in Idaho and hunt Montana and Colorado, and if you have a spot in Texas or whatever, you can't really do that in Canada if you kind of hunt the province you're in.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy playing the different games in different states, from anywhere from, application strategies to, just the different types of terrain and the different situations that you can put yourself in. And, I've hunted Oklahoma, Kansas, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and, hopefully make it up there to Idaho here in the next year or two and go up there and hunt. And man, I enjoy it. And, Texas hunting has got its own stereotypes that it deals with, but, I love it. And on the flip side of that, I also love the experiences that I can get elsewhere.
Speaking of Texas stereotypes, I mean, seeing some of the photos that you were posting, Rob, and from you guys' Aoudad trip was sort of, I think Wacey said it on the podcast with Snyder that we did. He goes, any idea that he had of Texas is completely gone. There's some rough country there, man. That was cool.
You and me both.
How much shit did you catch? Actually, for the listen that javelina, how much shit did you catch?
Being 5'7" and it last name Patudo, I got pretty thick skin. But from the moment, I'm not gonna lie, I was intimidated shooting in front of Aaron. The minute I missed that first javelina, I'm like, all right, here we go. It was a shit show. But the cool thing for me, he's putting it up on Instagram. It was a struggle mentally. The story for me was really just okay, you know what? Those javelinas own me, but I just staying focused to make a shot on a sheep was the 4 days is what I was focused on. And, and at one point I told Aaron, I'm like, hey, I'm going this way. And went up the creek and I shot a freaking javelina, and 5 minutes later I shoot a javelina. I'm like, all right, you can come back now. just stay away from me when I got to shoot.
And I guarantee you the guys that were talking all that shit in the comments, I would love to see their shots, because I guarantee you they would miss some shots as well.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I got thick skin. It was, it's funny. It's funny, Wacey, because like the last week or so, it's really kind of hit me that I just bow hunt because I love it. Right. I was doing it. I was doing it, long before freaking podcasts and all this shit. I start the podcast and it kind of puts your name out there and your face out there. And all of a sudden people want to know what you're doing and you're telling people what you're doing. It's a little bit of kind of a creepy world. It just like this last week, I'm like, why do I expose myself? Cause I just have fun doing what I want to do. Now I have to explain myself. It's kind of weird.
Well, that's where it's, not to interrupt you, Tyler,
no,
but
go ahead.
That's where this is, I guess the way that I grew up hunting isn't popular in certain circles, whether it be baiting or whatever. And it's just the way I've always hunted. And it's never seemed easy to me. It's never seemed like it's not fair. It's none of that. And so social media, like Rob said, you start putting yourself out there, and then it's and everybody and their dog wants to tell you why what you're doing is not right or whatever. It's like, man, I've just, I don't know. I've just done this my whole life, and this is the way we do it, and this is what I do. And I guess I'm sorry if you don't like it.
Yeah. With the podcast, you put yourself out there because you're it's part of the podcast. And it's been, I can't believe where this podcast has gone. But then I look at people like, nobody in particular, but, I see people like posting themselves up there and posting their shooting and all of this. And I look at them and go, why do you want to just expose yourself to, to everybody? Like, we're doing this over here for a reason, for the podcast, and it kind of sucks, to be honest with you. So why would you, willfully put yourself through this? I don't know.
Man, I was just saying to Wacey the other day, like, I kind of like not having told any stories about myself yet, or like kind of clued people into my backstory at all. It's good. I mean, I was talking to the photographer Nick Treehern from Northern BC here, because he's going to come on, and we were just chatting or whatever. He's like, by the way, what's your name? I'm thoroughly enjoying the anonymity that I have, and I'll try to keep it going, I guess.
And that's you should have a stage name.
Dirk Diggler.
There you go.
That's the thing about social media too. I want to pull the plug some days so bad and just say to hell with it and go back to life before it. But I really enjoy, like, I would have never met you guys or met Aaron or anybody without it. So it's kind of like, it's kind of like, man, it's kind of like,
it's a double-edged sword. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of one of the components of this whole podcast is we're not like, it's not a soapbox for me to talk about myself. I want to share cool stories from cool people and bullshit with people, and maybe do some good in the conservation side of things, and just have fun too, man. Like, this just should be a cool thing. I don't want to be the next gritty gunman or anything like that, right?
Yeah. Without belaboring the social media topic, because I would much rather talk about hunting.
Yeah, for sure.
It is such a small fraction of the negativity, as opposed to how much positive, like Wacey said, you get to meet all these people, right? That you would never meet. And good people, and people sending you pictures of their harvest and, whatever they kill, and, the excitement and the joy and all that. But it just takes one dickhead to just derail everything. You're like, really? Why do I even do this? But
it is a powerful space for sure. I mean, go ahead, Wace.
Yeah, one thing just that I've one negative for me from social media is, remember back in the day, Rob, you'd go to a hunting shop and there was a brag board, and and you'd look at all the big deer, and you're just kind of like, you just stand there and stare at them. And now if you want to see big deer, you just click on one page, and with the flick of your thumb, you can look at 50 mule deer over 200 inches. It's almost taken away from me the magic of, what seeing a truly big animal is. And like, it doesn't take away from my hunting. Like, I still get excited for chasing whatever, but just the social media is it's so watered down and flooded out. I just when I see elk pictures and stuff, I just scroll right through.
No, I'm with you. It really has. I guess if somebody looks at porn, you get tired of looking at the same thing over and over again, so you just kind of lose interest. It's kind of the way
Not
it is.
Wacey.
With horns, not Wacey. Yeah,
just got to click on a different tab.
All right, we're starting to sound like crusty old man here, hating on social media a bit. So let's skip right ahead here, and why don't you hit us with Rob or Blake? Hit us with like maybe one of your favorite Stikbo hunts to date.
Go ahead, Blake. You're a killer, man.
Too.
No, I mean, I haven't been doing this very long, so I've only got a few to choose from. But, it's probably hands down my favorite is that first high country mule deer hunt that I did in Colorado, and it was my first hunt up there, my first hunt in that kind of elevation or anything like that, and I was really, really on the fence. I'd been shooting a Stikbo for about a year at the time, and I was shooting well and felt confident with it and everything, but I was on the fence going into it on whether or not I was going to take my compound, just because it's, going into an unfamiliar environment, chasing deer in an unfamiliar terrain. And, we
that's
backpacked
me all the way right now.
Well, it was intimidating going into it. And I remember I posted something, I think on my Instagram story, that I had my compound set next to my Stikbo, and just said, wheels or wood. And Snyder replied to it, and he said, "Take the recurve, you pussy." And I said, "All right, well, that's it then. I guess I'm taking it." And anyway, so we backpacked in, I don't know, 6-7 miles, and not a terrible hike, but just enough to get in away from people somewhat, and got in there and got into some deer. And opening morning, I believe it was opening morning, went on my first stalk of the trip and got into, about 30 yards. Buck stands up and laced him, and he went like 30, 40 yards and piled up. I was like, man, you can't even draw it up
That's
any
easy.
better than that. And
Nice.
and there was a lot of luck involved, I'm sure. And but that was just like, it was like the high of highs. I had hunted with a Stikbo all year, the prior year, and was trying to kill a couple of different whitetails that I had on camera, and missed a couple of times and just had hell all year long. So to go on that hunt and first stalk, just, pinwheel one, and no, not a giant buck or anything like that, but I was beside myself. And, got him packed out to the truck, and, that'll be something that's, scorched in my memory for a long time. And Cameron was he was up above me and was taking pictures the whole time, and it was pretty dang cool.
That's awesome. You probably couldn't have asked for a better scenario, right?
No. So I don't know how deep you want to dive into details, but there was a giant group of deer. There was like, I don't know, probably 30 deer in this group, and 4 of them split off by themselves. And it was the buck that I shot, and there was 3 does, and they bedded in a good spot, kind of up underneath a ledge. And I just went around and got on top of them, and they kind of bedded where I couldn't see them from my original vantage point. So I thought, well, hell, I'll just get up above them and see if I can't, glass down in there and pick his antler tips out. So I crawled up above him and crawled on my hands and knees up to the top of this little outcropping and was peeking over, and I found one doe. Then I found another doe, and I could never find the third doe, and I couldn't find the buck. Well, then I looked up, and I didn't know, but Cameron had come up straight across from me, and he's standing, I don't know, a half a mile away, 3/4 of a mile away, standing skylining himself, just doing jumping jacks, trying to get my attention. Well, I finally see him. And so I picked up my glass, put my glass on him, and he just gave me the touchdown signal. Like, he's there, the buck's there, you're right there. And
Nice.
So I kind of backed off that outcropping and came around the other side and crawled back up to the edge and peeked over. And sure enough, I could see his antler tips, and he was probably 60 or 70 yards at that point. And I had the wind good, but I had to back off that outcropping and come around and almost come in and side hill to them. But there was enough stuff in between me and them where I could make it work. And I just snuck in there and ended up working out just perfect. So yeah, it was a heck of a way to start the trip off. But
yeah, no kidding.
That one will stick with me.
Those Colorado trips too, the photos and like the terrain that you guys are hunting, like I find myself rewatching all those stalker films over and over and over again. Like it's so crazy looking in there.
Yeah, no, and it's, I'm far from being experienced in that realm, but I mean, if you can find them up there, if you can get into the deer, it's and put yourself in country that, I tried to concentrate on when I was scouting, finding, basins and bowls that had some terrain in them, that didn't look just super open and flat and real bowled out. I wanted to find some areas that had like some little rim rocky, cliffy type areas. And we put ourselves in a good little spot there that had a lot of little rolls and cuts, and it made for great stalking conditions. And that's one thing I picked up on from listening to South is, he's not going to hunt in areas that's not conducive to the way he hunts. And it was just kind of a perfect storm.
That's awesome. So coming from out of state, I always wondered this with guys in the US jumping all over, coming from out of state, how far ahead of time are you in there scouting?
No, I don't have the time off to go up and do a bunch of scouting. I actually did make one trip about 3 or 4 days. I just went in there solo and just made a quick trip up there. And I mean, more than anything, I just wanted to go and look at the country and just more or less rule spots out. So I just went in and did a quick backpack trip back in there and looked at some country. I didn't really see any deer, but the snow was kind of just melting off. So I kind of figured, I was kind of iffy. There was a bunch of elk in there. So whenever we went back, I just picked a spot on the map and we went in there and just so happened we stumbled into a bunch of deer. So, I mean, there wasn't really a whole lot of scouting to do other than, what you can do online, which is a lot nowadays, honestly.
Yeah. You guys have some cool resources down there with like, what's that one? The Go Hunt or whatever. We don't have anything like that in Canada at all.
You're lucky. You're lucky because with that becomes masses of people. It's not a.
I always hear Snyder talking about, that Hunt and Fool dude post something and then the spot's blown up forever.
I haven't experienced it, but I can tell you again, okay, I'll go into the old crusty mode, but it wasn't that long ago, 10, 12 years ago that you would have to sit down at a computer what Blake just did. You'd have to sit down at a computer and put together all these pieces. And now Go Hunt or the Hunting Fool or whatever, they put all that together for you now. It's just made it easier.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, what about you? I hear you talk about the Frank Church a lot. was that just guiding, or did you kind of cut your teeth in there hunting with a stickbow?
Oh yeah, Wacey, I was at a time in my life where I probably shouldn't be in civilization. And so I went to the guide school back there, and great bunch of guys, and it's just hard work. And, so I spent the season in there, and we'd come out the end of November at that time. And then I'd go back in. So I was going in like April 15, and we'd do some bear hunts. Then we'd start, the guide school through the summer. It'd be packing smoke jumpers and just doing all kinds of stuff, fishing trips. And, then September roll around, you start elk hunting. So to say that I went from growing up in Massachusetts and just dying to do, just a kid with this like burning desire to be Daniel Boone, to being stuffed into that, 80 air miles from the end of the road, and everything's done on horseback, no electricity, and just live that dream for I don't know, 7 months of the year or whatever. It was just fantastic. So again, I was immersed in it. And, that's kind of how I learned. I couldn't cook for shit. So they were like, well, you're going to be a guide.
Yeah, I watched some videos on the Frank Church, and I don't think people understand the actual size of that area. I don't know if you could.
No, so where I was at, I think, I could be wrong, but I think we were the most remote airstrip. And it was, as far as the Frank Church goes, it was pretty mellow stuff. It was Chamberlain Basin, which is, timbered, lodge pole and timbered rolling ridges. It was up from the Salmon River. Gosh, I don't know, 14 miles, something like that, off the river up into the basin. And so our camps were anywhere from 21 miles, from 6 miles to 21 miles out from the cabin. So the hunters would fly in and stay at that cabin the first night. And then we had, 4 or 5 camps. But I guess I can't even quantify it. It was like 2.4 million acres. I mean, it's just massive. The other day, somebody asked me how long it would take me to get to Stanley, Idaho. And I was like, well, that's about 9 hours. Well, it's because you can't drive north to south in Idaho because it's just got this massive wilderness there. And guys, I can't convey to you what the elk herds were like in there prior to the wolves. And, everybody in Idaho has their wolf story, but it's heartbreaking to know what it was in the Frank Church. I mean, the predators there were thick prior to the wolves. In 1 year, I saw 7 lions. Well, you guys know if you see a lion, that's pretty awesome. To see 7 of them, that means you got a pretty high population.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so lions, bears, in the meadow in the evenings in like June and early July, there'd be 150, 175 cows and calves down there in the summertime. It was just an elk. It was elk paradise. You'd have tons of people flying in, just private people flying in and hunting off the airstrip. I mean, it was a bustling place. I mean, it was people use the wilderness. There was a reason to be in there, and now it's desolate. There's no friggin' elk in there, and nobody goes in there. It's just awful what's happened in there.
So what kind of happened with the wolf population in there? Are they just still running pretty thick, or have they kind of moved on now that there's not much game to eat?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Nobody's in there enough. I mean, Gus Thorson, he's been on the podcast a bit. He's probably the guy to ask. But nobody really goes in there enough. Like I said, we'd be in there from April to mid-November. We kind of had a finger on the pulse of what was going on. Well, today, the fishing game doesn't have money. There's no reason to fly in there. I know from hunters that have attempted to elk hunt in there that it's pretty sad. And I've gone in there 2 years here recently, bear hunting in the springtime, so you're up high and you're glassing, you're doing a lot of time behind the glass, and, you might see eight elk. That's astounding.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming both predator and prey has crashed in there.
I remember as a younger guy, I remember my dad and my uncle sitting around talking about, because the wolves that got reintroduced in the States came from Alberta. They were trapped here, and they're big timber wolves. And my dad and my uncles, they just were sitting around the table drinking coffee, talking about how crazy it was that somebody would actually want wolves, because we spent our whole lives up here pretty much fighting them. And now it's just, it's quantifying, and they're going to Colorado. Like I don't know. It's a topic in itself, but
it is. And I think anybody's naive if they don't really believe that the people pushing these wolves, their ultimate goal is just that there's no more hunting, right? They always say, well, let nature take care of itself. Well, it's too late for that. So it's sad. And if you can imagine, you guys can imagine how just tiring it gets talking about it. I mean, it's water under the bridge. We kill them suckers every chance we get. It's not their fault, but it's the lack of management. You guys know you don't manage them through just recreational hunting. It's not like a freaking deer. I mean, those things are.
Yep.
Yeah. So
well, it's open season year round up here, and it never ends. So
I think they just proposed that in Idaho, which I don't know what kind of difference that's going to make. But Idaho has been the best state. Maybe Wyoming's doing a pretty good job, but Idaho's pretty much said no, we're going to do this our way.
And that's how I kind of feel that the people that are behind this reintroduction stuff, I feel like the only one reason they want it is to let the wolves take care of the elk. It's just to push out hunting. It's just it's another way to try and stop hunters. That's what I believe.
Actually, I packed in some students. I think they were from the University of Oregon. I think it was 1990. They came into the Frank Church. They flew in, and I packed them in, and they traveled around at night howling, looking for wolves. The funny thing is, hindsight's 2020. Funny thing is, I can't say that there was a wolf in there. But, there was one hell of a dog track in there for a couple years, and we all thought it was a wolf. But you'd think that all of the Fish and Wildlife and all these people coming in, biologists, you think they'd ask the outfitters what's going on? And we just like, well, they're freaking here, but you don't know it. And maybe it would have made a difference if we threw the red flag up and said, time out, we got some already.
Yeah. Crazy. Go ahead, Ty.
I wasn't going to ask anything. I was just going to let you guys keep rolling.
Oh yeah, no, I know, and it's kind of just like I feel like you're the same way, Rob. It's just beat to death, and the only thing we can do is just keep manage them as much as we can, and just hope for the best.
It's pretty cool when we started that deal where we're paying guys to kill them down here.
I got that poster sent to me, and I was like, well, saddle up, boys. We're heading south.
I just somebody was telling me, gosh, I think it was Jim Eckhout. He's got a buddy from Alaska that came down last year and cleaned house. Some of them are $1,000 a pop. So, in Idaho, it's in a lot of places you're allowed 20. So that's pretty good haul.
Yeah. In a lot of BC, it's no bag limit, but with the season, and then other places it's a bag limit of 3 with a more restrictive season. It's kind of funny. In northern BC, it's pretty well let it rip, but down south here, where a lot of them granola eating folks are, there's not much of a season for them.
Yeah.
So.
Well, if you want to get back into stick bows, I was going to ask Blake, did you talk about your first wood bow, Blake? Like what it was?
Yeah, I'd be curious for that.
So I started out, and I don't recommend people doing this, but I'm stubborn and have little man syndrome. So I bought a 60-pound, 58-inch Black Widow PSA,
Woo.
and just a beautiful bow. And you know, I shot it pretty well right out of the gate, but I was also very lucky that I got to spend a little bit of time with Tom Klum
That's
right
awesome.
at the start. And so I pretty well, you know, maybe not all the way on the right foot, but I started with as minimal bad habits as possible. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend people starting out that heavy, but I did. And it, matter of fact, when I went in to see Tom, he said, you know, what's the weight on your bow? And I told him, he said, oh, you know, you're overbowed. We went in and started shooting. He was like, you're not overbowed. You're fine. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend people, starting out that way. But no, from there, it's just been all downhill. I've got another Widow coming here pretty quick. That'll be a 60-inch PSA with a G10 riser and carbon limbs, and I'm really looking forward to getting that thing saddled up and ready to go and get some new arrows tuned out of it. I'm kind of swapping some things around this year as far as arrows go, so I'm looking forward.
That hog you shot here the other day. Do you have problems getting through with your setup on, like, when you shoot them hogs in the shoulder, because they kind of got that armor on the shoulder, eh? Like, do you have a hard time?
So no, I don't, and that's where a lot of, you know, I'd say probably 80% of the animals I've shot with a bow have all been pigs, just because it's, you know, y'all talk about wolf issues, and down here it's pig issues. I mean, you just can't kill enough of the damn things. So I get plenty of target practice and get to run a lot of arrows through those things. And as far as I'm concerned, anyway, as far as you know, like a tough animal to put down quick with a bow, they're pretty stinking tough. Their hide on those big boars, like you said, they've got that shield over their shoulder, and it's basically like, I don't know, it's like cartilage almost. It's kind of hard to explain. It almost feels like bone when you touch it. It's like hard, but it's more or less like scar tissue that they build up from fighting with each other, is always what I've been told. But no, so that's kind of what I've based all of my you know, broadhead choices and arrow weights and limb weights or whatever is off of shooting those big boars. And I've gotten some pretty crazy results with the setups I've been shooting those things. And I generally, like, if I pinwheel a big boar in the shoulder, I'm not going to go all the way through it, but I'll be hanging out the other side, you know, more times than not. And to me, that's a big win, because even with a compound, it's pretty hard to get all the way through those things. Even shooting 80 pounds, it's they're a tough animal.
Yeah, I've heard stories about guys. Go ahead.
I had the opportunity to skin one monster pig out. You know, it's one big boar when I was in Texas some years ago with the Wenzel brothers. And Blake can't overstate enough what that shield is like. It was a bitch to skin. It's just massive.
And it can be.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Wacey.
No, I was just going to say, like, we have a small population of wild hogs up in Alberta. And back in the day when I was a younger kid, I had a 70-pound compound, and I remember shooting two hogs. They were in the same group, and my arrow only went in maybe 6 inches with the compound. I shot them in the shoulder, and they weren't very big pigs. So that's why I was kind of asking, this big hog you shot, I was like, man, you know, how are you getting all the way through? But
no, I don't get all the way through those big ones very often with the Stikbo. I've done it a couple of times, but generally, you know, if you hit them in the shoulder, there's not a whole lot you're going to do to get the arrow to go all the way through them. usually, I mean, what good practice is if you're wanting to get all the way through them is just wait for something quartering away and try and get it through that behind that shield and then out the chest is honestly probably the best shot to take on them to go all the way through them. But no, so that they're not like big boned like an elk or a moose or anything like that, but I think their hide, it's usually got mud and all. It's just their hide is really tough, and then you factor that shield into them, and they're about as good of a broadhead test or an arrow test as you could ask for, honestly.
When we were talking to Jack Spinks once. I did a podcast with him, and he was talking about those hogs over in Australia. They were rolling all the time in that mud, and he was talking about the getting through that mud was a big issue on hogs. Just to start to get into the goods, that clay and dirt was taking up some of the energy from the broadhead.
It's wild.
Yeah, and not to make a product plug or anything like that, but that's kind of where I came to the edge retention on a broadhead being so important, because going through that hide and mud and shield and everything else, if that thing's dull by the time it enters the chest cavity, it's not going to go very much further. And if you've got a head that can stay sharp all the way through there, I've had a lot better luck getting through to the other side.
Yeah, for sure. What are you guys shooting for broadheads?
Well, we're both shooting iron wills.
Yeah, he talks about edge retention. Did you see how many of those broadheads I bounced off the rocks and still killed javelinas with them?
I think it was last year. I accidentally shot over the back of a bear at like 60 yards with a compound, and I went cruise down, got my arrow, went back, got my stuff together, went for a cruise, and shot that same bear with the same broadhead, and it was an iron will wide. Yeah, and it was still sharp. So
nice.
Yeah,
nice.
No, that's what I'm shooting too.
How did them javelinas smell? Because I asked Snyder, and his answer was pretty vulgar. But
a lot of his answers are vulgar.
I couldn't smell them when I was out there, so I couldn't tell you.
It's like the perfect COVID animal.
One of the ones I shot didn't smell that bad, and I was like, "Oh, you guys are full of shit." And the second one I shot was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even want my arrow back. Holy smokes!"
Yeah,
really. Eh? What are you shooting for a bow, Rob?
I shoot a Black Widow PCH right now. I'm digging it. I got some carbon limbs coming, but I got to give a shout out to you guys for getting Jared Tolkey on. I'm a big fan of Jared and Dan's. Such great people, and they build a great product. I used to shoot Tolkies, so I was I tried to get Jared on the podcast before, so I was pretty stoked to hear you get him on. That was awesome.
He's just like the nicest dude, man. Like, I find myself talking to him about just random stuff that has nothing to do with bows. He's just a good dude.
So have you guys, did you guys ever come down south and meet Jared and Dan, or just over the phone stuff?
I've just been over the phone, but Dan invited me down. I'm going to go shoot his stable here. But I'm just waiting for this border thing to clear up.
You mean shoot a stable? You mean shoot all the bows down there?
Yeah. I want to get into one of his longbows, but I'm a little gun shy on it. Just with longbows, I've had some bad ones, but I wanted to try him first. And he's not that far from me. He's only 8 hours or something. So
I'm like 3 hours from him. But I got to say, my claim to fame is I know somebody that shot a Toki bow from day one. My buddy Mike, he shot Toki whips, crying out loud from, nobody knew who Dan Toki was. I didn't even know. He's shooting these Toki whips. But they've been cranking out good bows for years. They're good dudes. Really good dudes. I mean, when you meet Dan and Jared, they'll give you the shirt off their back. I mean, full of really good knowledge. Just great people to have in the community.
Yeah, it's too bad the border's closed. We're going on a archery mountain goat hunt here in August, and it would be really nice for my hunting partner Chad out here to host them with us while we're going, but doesn't look like that'll happen with the border. So,
you guys don't think it'll be open by August?
Man, I don't know. I could say some pretty vulgar things about the dude running the place up here, but no, I don't think so.
We got a guy with an IQ of a first grader running the country, so
yeah.
Hey, us too.
Well, put them together. They might get out of grade school.
Oh, dude, somebody just sent me, I got to open my phone here quick while we're doing this, because somebody just sent me a meme like right before we started this thing. And it said, it was like, your guy has his head so far up China's ass, you can see Trudeau's feet.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, I referred to him as the gay king in a podcast earlier, but I think that got some people real upset. So,
well, we all have our crosses to bear. But I'll tell you, when I was up in Fairmont, I think up in Fairmont or something. I was like 3 or 4 hours north of the border there.
In BC or.
Yeah.
You said that to me the other day when we were texting. I don't think that's a place in BC.
Where's that?
Fairmont? I don't know. I don't know if that's
like BC's just north. Big.
Yeah,
BC's big. What do you know?
Yeah, right.
Anyways, we were up at some hot springs up there. And,
you know what? You're right. I just Googled it. That's a hot springs. We're good. Okay. Rob knows more about BC than I do. I'm sorry.
No. So anyways, I love Canada. I can't wait to get back up there and hang out. Yeah. Those guys are awesome. I was up there hanging out, the kid and the wife and kid up there in Hot Springs. And it was actually embarrassing because when people found out I was from the United States, and this must have been, it must have been right after the election, when Trump got in. All anybody wanted to do was talk about Trump. And it was actually embarrassing. Like, there's a lot more cool shit in the United States besides our president that tweets a lot.
Yeah, we get that though too, man. Like, that's like Jared Tolkie's just on me solid about the metric system. Like we were talking brace height on my whip this morning, and he's like, "Yeah, I like a little lower brace height, yada yada. Maybe try starting around 6.5 inches." He goes, "I don't know what that is in Canadian though."
Yeah, I always do that with the exchange rate all the time.
Oh, dude, exchange rate's brutal. Although your guys' dollar's kind of dropping like a brick the last few days, so it's a good time for us guys to spend some money. Yeah,
I don't even pay attention when it swings the other way. You guys all come down to Home Depot here in Sandpoint. It's a constant. It's a constant flow. Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh yeah, for sure. Have you done much hunting up in BC, Rob?
You know what? I'm glad you asked that. I went on a fantastic trip up there one time. Have you heard of a place called Lake Utsa?
I don't know. Maybe.
Well, Google it because it exists.
Okay, good. So, folks, if you want any help hunting BC, just DM Rob at the Stickbow Chronicles and not Tyler. Okay.
Yeah. So, like in 1995 or something, I knew some folks that were going up there, and they said, "Hey, you want to go on this moose hunt?" So the guide, the whole trip was made around this guide. He was 70 years old, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
The dude was legit. He had served in World War II in whatever special forces or Rangers you guys have up there. I don't know. In World War II, were they Rangers?
Maple syrup,
I know
something.
No, I can't remember what they're called, but yes, I know what you're talking about.
No, this guy was legit. He had gone over. I think the government had flown him over to to Normandy for the 50th. So it must have been in 94 for the 50th anniversary of D-Day to represent Canada. I mean, this guy was so cool to hang out with and talk. He was so proud of Canada. I absolutely loved hanging out with him. The hunting sucked, but I had such a blast hanging out with his dudes.
All those old boys too in World War II, they all volunteered, eh? There was no draft here.
No. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they're all hard as nails, those guys.
So the funny thing is, like, it was 100 miles of dirt road. We get to this barge. We load all our shit on this barge. We go across the lake. We stay at this cool cabin. We did end up, my buddy ended up killing a moose like the first or second day. Just a little dink. And there was nothing left around. So the old guy, and legit, dude, he's like 70. We barge back across because the hunting sucks. We drive 100 miles of dirt road, and I think we went into Burns Lake. I think he lived in Burns Lake. And this dude's drinking like a fish, and he's freaking hammered. And it is a full-on snowstorm. And I don't know, it's probably 1 o'clock in the morning, and I got a deer and an elk tag, and he's trying to get me to shoot a deer in the road in the middle of the night of the headlights. I'm like, no, man, no, I am not falling for this. So we stayed in Burns Lake with his family, and the guy was just so cool to hang out with. We end up driving around town. He's trying to get me to shoot a black bear in town. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. But that was my one trip to BC, and I just had a blast. That guy was just the salt of the earth.
Sounds like a real A1 hunting experience you had in BC.
You know what though? He had guided his whole life. He guided in Tweedsmuir.
Yeah.
And had just some great stories. I mean, he was just a backwards guide, and it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of country up here, and there's a lot. It's very diverse country. You have everything from the jungle down by me to some big open country up north. So it's a pretty cool spot.
Were you guys born in '94? I'm not asking Blake.
No.
Shit.
No. 91, Dick.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I've also discovered too, not only am I the youngest, I'm also not the shortest. So I'm in good shape on this podcast. Like, it's great.
Oh, I'm glad I could help you out.
Right.
Rob can wear the shortest. He can wear that badge of honor.
Oh, hell yeah.
All right. Well, hey, we're coming up on an hour already. That goes fast, eh? Wasey, you got anything else for these guys before we let them sign off, or should we get them to hit us with one last story?
Yeah, it don't matter. Whatever they want to do.
That's hosting 101, folks. What do you guys want to do?
Well, man, I like to tell stories.
Yeah, for sure. Why don't you hit us? I haven't asked you this one yet, Rob. Why don't you hit us with your kind of favorite Stikbo hunt to date? Like your favorite thing you've got done.
Well, Stikbo hunt. That's all I've ever done. I've never killed anything. Never killed anyone with a compound.
Nice.
Probably I don't remember what year it was. Me and a buddy. With the hunting in Idaho used to be fantastic, and it was to the point where we just, like, the first weekend we'd go somewhere different. We knew where we'd go kill elk, but we'd be like, hey, let's just go explore. So we had this plan. We're going to drop into this canyon and throw a spike camp up and hunt some ridges we'd never been in before. And of course, my buddy, everybody I've ever hunted with until like last year, always shot a compound, right? So he just changed over to a Stikbo. So he's got a compound, I got a Stikbo, and we dropped into this canyon, drop our packs at first light. It's August 30th, and it's forecasted to be 90 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's friggin' hot in town. And so we climb this ridge, and it just sucks. It's just this, there's no feed. It's It's kind of a cedar. It's just no underbrush. And we sat down, whipped the map out. We're like, man, this place blows. And try to make a plan. And my buddies, we put the map together. We're like, let's just, walk out here. And we put the map together and we hear splashing. There is no evidence of any water on this hillside. And we hear the splashing. We looked at each other. We're like, it's a friggin' wallow. So we kind of got our wires crossed. I wanted a cow call for him, but instead he moved forward, which was not the right plan. And he cow called. Immediately. This bull bugles like it's blowing a kazoo, and it comes over the hill. I have no cover because it just didn't, we didn't communicate well. I'm in the wide open on a knee, and this little raghorn 5-point comes down the hill prancing, all four feet landing in the size of a dinner plate. His head, it's just bizarre. His head is so far tilted back. He's hopping like a mule deer, and he's going to run me over. And I jumped up. I threw my hands in the air to stop him. And he skids to stop, like throwing dirt on me, and bolts about 5 or 8 yards out there. I don't have a shot, and I leaned over, figuring my buddy's going to shoot past me there, and nothing. And so I stood up and freaking drilled him, and he runs down the hill, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I turn around, I give him the fist pump, like, yeah, I drilled him, and just to see him hit full draw. I'm like, what the hell? And I look, and there's another bull over there, and whack, he shoots that, and immediately I'm like, son of a bitch, we are a long ways from anywhere. It's 90 degrees. We just killed 2 bulls. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And so he's a big dude, and he comes down the hill. It was his first bow kill, and he's all cool. Excited. And I'm like, you dickhead. I just shot one. Why'd you shoot one? So, that we ended up packing those, quartering them, packing them down to the draw. We got done with that at 6 p.m. We pulled our camps out, got to the truck, and then the next day was 3 miles downhill with 2 elk, 3 trips apiece, 3 pieces. So it ended up being an 18-mile day with 9 of it loaded. But that was one of those epic hunts.
That sounds awesome.
Oh, it was a good time.
That sounds awesome. Well, cool, guys. Thanks for giving us kind of a look into both of your backgrounds a bit. And now when we're listening to the Stikbow Chronicles, we'll kind of know a little bit more who's talking to us.
Yeah, man. I feel bad. I want to hear what you guys' story are. I think we need to get you guys on and tell your stories. Yeah,
no, we will for sure. Wacey's story is a lot more interesting than mine. The guy's killed a pile of stuff.
I will say I learned how to, I get dive pretty deep down into tuning, and I learned how to tune a Stickbow from Wacey.
The old deflection test, huh?
You bet.
Nice. That day I was scrolling through Instagram, and there was all these tech videos and tuning videos, and I said, shit, I'm going to make one of these. So I did that. I made that video. I posted 2 minutes later. My wife texts me. She's like, are you drunk?
That's funny.
So good.
Well,
that was a great video, man.
I got to say, I'm a little bit,
so everybody can find it.
I'm a little surprised because Blake's pretty anal about his tuning. So I didn't realize he got it from Wacey. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that video.
It's one of my favorite videos ever. That's actually how that's when I started following you, Wacey. Is I think Aaron shared it on his story, and I was like, that's some of the funniest shit I've ever seen.
I was at that time.
In the context of it is that's pretty much Instagram is one solid tuning video there for a little while. That's why it was so funny.
I was chewing a can of snuff a day, and I was trying to quit desperately. And
that sounds like you're right there quitting.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how I had a cigarette going. I had started smoking cigarettes to quit chewing. So then I ended up smoking and chewing at the same time. So in that video, I got a heater burning just to shoot into the trees there. So.
No, time out.
That was great.
I don't know how
you never seen this, Rob?
Me? Oh yeah,
you never seen this video?
No, I
was about to say.
No,
it's one of the greatest videos I've ever seen.
Well, guys like Wacey and a handful of other ones kind of keep people honest. I don't know if they keep people honest, but they sure point out the bad stuff.
Like you guys' podcast the other day, I listened to it at work. And I was like, man, if they are not in the same room, they're going to be punching each other in the shoulders when they're talking.
Dude, that was awesome. That was an awesome meme, dude.
Oh, that meme, yeah.
So then, yeah, so I had a good laugh. And that's
go ahead, Wacey.
I was just going to say, that's kind of, I don't take myself too serious, and I'm just like cutting up all the time. Makes everybody laugh. So.
Man, that's the way I am about this whole podcast. Even my approach to bow hunting, it's like I had to dial it back for a bit there because it was just like, you guys need to relax. Just like go out and have fun. Everybody's like freaked out about what they're, front of center and, and all this stuff. Just like have fun, man. Chill.
Yeah. One thing I'm gonna bring up the trail cam debate quick. Just I don't want to go too deep into it. But one thing that you guys never brought up as a positive to it is what I always figured for the working man, a guy that couldn't have time to really go and scout, and the camera could scout for him. So, he could go in there, pull his card. And if he only had 2 days to hunt, he could still burn in, check that card, and just go from there. I always considered it as it was a poor man's scouting tool.
Well, and I think that there's some guys in Utah who have, I think, voiced that side of the argument. It's like, well, you're not just hurting the guides and outfitters. You're hurting the guys who, working 8 to 5 that only get to hunt on the weekends sometimes. And, I think there's a case to be made for that. And one point I didn't bring up, not so hopefully we don't dive too deep down into this, but one point I didn't bring up is, talking about the trail cams and, wanting to know that specific buck lives in that specific canyon or whatever it is. I still have fun with that. Now, on the flip side, Rob and I have talked about that, like whenever I was growing up as a kid, the nostalgia of going and sitting and not knowing what's there. Like there was a lot of fun to that. And I certainly acknowledge that, but, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but a lot of the fun that I get now is playing the game with a specific deer. It's like one-on-one, me versus you. I know you're there, and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out how to get an arrow in you one way or another. And that's one thing I didn't necessarily bring up that I wished I would have.
And another thing too, for bear baiting, a trail cam is almost a must. If you want to try and kill the biggest boar that's living in them woods, I don't know, you could sit, but it's just how much time do you have to sit? That's another thing too, right? And if you're working all the time, it's pretty tough. So a trail camera, for bear baiting, I always just relied on it just to be like whether to sit or not to sit, so.
Well, I've got a question for Wacey, but before I ask the question, I got to tell Blake that I hate you and my dad hates you.
I wish you'd never been born.
Oh God, that was awesome. So Wacey, I struggle with this, right? Like Blake and I talking. It's tough for me to come up with an answer to it. How do you feel about bear baiting, and how do you feel about baiting deer?
This is about to get heated, guys.
Not heated. It's a good discussion.
No, it's fine. It's just Blake said this on the podcast. I think it was Blake, that because people think like if deer baiting in an area is not legal, people look down on it. Like, it's not legal and you shouldn't hunt like that. So for me, deer baiting in Alberta is not legal, but bear baiting is. So it's hard. You really have to have an open mind. And I always said, and one thing that always drove me nuts about Saskatchewan guys, because in Saskatchewan, baiting is legal, but they would hide it on the TV shows. They would always dump it and hide it behind the log. The magic log. That's a joke we have running with my buddies up here.
Yep.
Them guys all have magic logs up there. But if you're going to bait, just show it. I don't know why you have to hide it. If it's legal, just show it, because they're trying to portray something that isn't actually real. So for me, if it's legal, yeah, heck yeah, why not? I mean, everybody else is doing it. Like Blake said, on the other side of the fence, there's some guy with 8 feeders. So, I mean, you got to kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, we can be friends, because that's always been, not to cut you off, but that's always irritated the hell out of me, because there's so many people that bait that lie about it.
Yeah.
And I think if more people, more of the hardcore hunters who do bait and do hunt over bait, maybe just were honest about it, that maybe it wouldn't get quite the disdain that it does. But, talking about in a state where it's illegal, if a guy goes and dumps a bag of corn out in a state where baiting is illegal, then, that's obviously not fair at all, because he's got an unfair advantage over everybody else. Now, on the flip side of that, if it's legal and everybody's doing it, well, everybody's on a level playing field, and the deer, they know what's going on. They're smart to it. So no, I think it's funny you say that about the magic log, because I see that in people's trail cam photos all the time. And watching some of Jim Shockey's videos growing up, it was very evident that those deer eating something on the other side of that down tree.
Yeah. BC is 180 out from Alberta. We're allowed to bait deer, but not bears.
Really? Shut up.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty interesting. We're also falling over bears out here, though. They'd be piling in.
And with that being said, there is zones in Alberta that are not legal to bait bears. Because of grizz, and you can't bait, because more than likely you're going to have a grizzly show up. So it's touch and go. But as far as my personal view, I'm not opposed to any style of hunt as long as it's legal. I am opposed to crossbows, though. Just put that out there.
Yeah, we can be buddies.
Nobody wants to touch that one.
Oh, with a crossbow thing? Oh, yeah, it's
I'll go get my bat that I've broke from beating that horse.
Yeah. That's my 2 cents on all of it. But
in BC, they last season, when the new regulations came out, our regs last 2 years at a time, so 2020 and 2021. When those rigs came out, they introduced a cellular trail cam ban a month before season and 10 days before season ends. So basically, those last 2 weeks of August, when a cell cam is useful to get an inventory of what elk or deer are in the area, they're banned then. So you can run regular trail cams on bait here now, but you're not allowed to run them cellular. And a lot of those places you would put them are not areas that you would want to pack into to check those cameras before season started anyway. So,
but what an enforcement nightmare. I mean, the more technology, the more regulations, it's the enforcement is just, that's tough.
I know where Rob's coming from too, because back in the day we just hunted. Like we went out, you read sign and you hunted. And to be honest with you, I'm not opposed to banning trail cams. If they wanted to ban them, I'll make it along just fine. I got no qualm with it, but I will use them that they're legal.
Let me ask you, did I come across on that podcast as being anti trail camera?
No.
Okay.
I just think you're maybe just like didn't like Blake that
you were
day
leaning to the opposite side of the side that I was leaning to.
Of course, that's why we work good together.
Yeah, and I mean, well, with the cell cam thing, and I'll say this: I use cell cams, but the reason that we started using them was not to not to have the instant feedback, which we learned through using them. I mean, the cell cams kill deer. They just do. There's, and I'll totally admit that cell cams are a distinct advantage over a regular trail cam. But the reason we started using them is just to save freaking time and money. You start talking about running out there and running 10 or 15 trail cameras once a week, and that gets expensive. So we got the cell cams and thought, hell, this will save us some money. And then, 3, 4, 5 years into it, we're like, man, we're really pinning down, these deer's habits, because we're getting all this information real time, and it's, I don't know, it's, and we probably won't quit using them as long as they're legal, just because it does save us a lot of money. But it's, that at some point there's got to get a line drawn, and just got to figure out where that's at.
Yeah, I'm not an enormous fan of any additional regulation getting put in place, because I feel like when it goes, you never get it back, and it's creeping that direction more and more, it seems. I mean, there's obviously a limit to what should be allowed, and that's obvious to me, but I just hate to see us lose seasons and stuff like that. And I feel like it all kind of is working the same direction in some ways, on some things anyways.
Yeah. That conversation can take a whole nother turn. Like, us as a whole, us as, bow hunters, like standing up against what really is a threat. Speaking of myself personally, I like Idaho is against, or it's not legal to use lighted nocks. It's not legal to use expandable broadheads during archery season. And, I'm glad that it's like that, but really that's small potatoes. We talk about banning like hunting methods and banning, bear hunting altogether, like they tried to do in California. I really, really, really wish that there was an organization that would just be bare bones, just like protecting hunting and not all the BS.
Let's start one. We got plenty of time, don't we, Rob?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I got a few minutes.
Wasey should be the face of it for sure.
Wasey could be our PR guy.
With a cigarette and a flannel.
Yeah.
Exactly. Dude, seriously, we need to get you guys on our podcast and rip it up. I just like to laugh.
Let's do it.
And Fred Bear smoked heavy too, so you can't count it out as it's a solid technique for good shooting.
It's cover scent.
Scent control.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Cover scent.
All right, boys. Well, let's put a pin in it here, and we can pick this back up soon.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to our channel and follow us on Instagram @WildernessLocals or at our website at wildernesslocals.com.